How often have you worked towards a goal and it's felt like everything is going wrong? Like anything and everything that could fall apart, get in your way, go wrong, does. Well, here's the thing. The thing that's holding you back may not be outside of you. It may be within, and therefore within your control. And that's what we're going to delve into today. Hi, I am Ravi Tangri, and this is SOULgineering Your Life and Work. And this is about how do you bring more heart and soul into your life, into your work, into your play, into every part of your life. And what this is about is finding those pressure points that truly transform your life, make it more fulfilling, more productive, just more of what you want. And today, what I want to get into is those situations where it feels when you're working towards something like everything's going wrong, and that it may even feel like you're getting in your own way. You've got a goal, there's something that you want, and it's like you just cannot make progress. It's like you're trudging through sludge and feeling like you're getting pulled back, or you're pulling yourself back. You keep trying, you try harder, and nothing works. And the worst of it is sometimes it feels like you're sabotaging yourself. You're not doing the things you know you should, or you're doing things you know you shouldn't. And you're not putting the energy in when you need it. Well, there's bad news and there's good news, and it's the same. A lot of times, these blocks are absolutely what you're sensing, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. They are within you, almost like holding yourself back. But that's also the good news, because that means it's within you, so you have the capacity to change it. And what I've found is that when we are working towards something, or when we have a problem and we want to change it, or a bad situation and we can't seem to change it, there's actually a win for us staying in the problem situation, in the situation where it's not working. But this isn't a conscious win. It's in your unconscious mind. Somehow you're trying to help yourself in a weird way. And that's why I call these your hidden wins, where you are actually benefiting from what you consciously see as a problem. It doesn't make any logical sense, but most of what you do is run by your unconscious mind. And it takes over almost on autopilot, especially if it feels that you're in danger or there's a problem, and it really can try to protect you in ways that frustrate you in terms of where you want to go consciously. Now, this has been discovered for many years. Sometimes people call it secondary gain, which I find a little buzzwordy, but I think of them as hidden wins, or benefits from what we consciously see as a problem, that in a weird way, we're actually benefiting from this. I first learned of this back in the 80s, when there were a whole group of therapists I know of who got together from all over the continent. And they discovered they were dealing with a similar problem with women in their 20s and 30s who were having problems with weight. The women would do all sorts of diets, all sorts of different things, exercise, whatever. They might lose the weight, but it always came back. And what a number of these therapists using a certain approach found is that there was a hidden win, and they found this common thread with people that they were working with all over the continent, that earlier on, when these women started going out to clubs and such in their late teens, early 20s, they would get hit on by men. and they didn't know how to handle that. Now, this doesn't sound logical in any way, shape, or form until you realize that your unconscious mind is like a 5-year-old kid. It reacts like a 5-year-old kid with the capacity of a 5-year-old kid. And it was freaking out under these conditions. And it just desperately needed to be less hit on, less attractive to these men. And so what often happened is the unconscious mind thought, okay, I've got to be less attractive. I'll put on weight. And that's what happened. They put on weight so that they would be less hit on by men. That unconscious mind is desperately trying to protect the person. But years later, the woman wants to lose weight. And it's like there's an internal struggle going on that they're fighting. Part of her is desperately trying to protect her. Part of her wants to be healthier, fitter, look better. And that's why they could never win. And what these therapists found was that once they helped them find strategies to deal with being hit on, all of a sudden the weight became a non-issue. It just took care of itself because there was no longer desperate need for it. There were other ways to cope with those situations. I found this in corporate situations as well. There's a manufacturing plant near me that had amazing union management negotiations, and they were able to resolve so much in-house. And when I was chatting with them, they were talking about how it was frustrating for them because sometimes things did need to escalate and go to arbitration. And that was frustrating because it took 6 months to go to arbitration because there weren't enough arbiters. And once I talked to them, they were saying they needed more arbiters to deal with these things. And once I talked to them, they realized, no, they didn't need more arbiters. They needed fewer, because the fact that it took 6 months to resolve gave them much more motivation to deal with it and resolve it in-house. So what they saw as a problem, the lack of arbiters, the long time frame, was actually a benefit. There was a hidden win that they were benefiting from. Having too few arbiters, they resolve things in-house. If they had more arbiters, they'd just let things go to arbitration, and then it would probably drag out again. And that cycle would just keep going back and forth. So here's the thing, is that there's often, if we just cannot make progress, that means we're benefiting from where we are. And there's many ways that this happens. And remember, on a personal basis, this is often run by your unconscious mind. So this makes no logical, rational sense. But it's just this often scared child part fighting to keep you safe. And there could be all sorts of benefits. I've found so many in my coaching work. I've had CEOs fight irrationally to stay in toxic situations. And this is the biggest, I believe, hidden win of all, because it's what they knew. It was their familiar zone. People talk about the comfort zone. If you've heard me before, I don't call it the comfort zone. I call it the familiar zone. It's what we know. We fight to keep things the same. So there's a benefit to that. We know how to deal with what we're dealing with, even if it's a toxic situation, even if it's unhealthy. And your unconscious mind will often fight to stay with what you know, even though it makes absolutely no rational sense. So here's the challenge. This is run by your unconscious mind. How do you find your hidden wins? Right? Because they are, by definition, your blind spots. It's run by your unconscious mind. You're not conscious of this. How do you find them? Well, the simplest way that I've found from an individual point of view, when I'm working with myself and what I teach my coaching clients, there's some questions you can start to ask. Often when we set goals, or when we think about what we want to accomplish to get out of a bad situation, we see all the wonderful stuff that would happen. So one of the things I ask is, if I got everything I wanted, if everything was resolved, what would be the worst thing that would happen? Or if I got everything I wanted, what am I most afraid of? And also, what is it that's keeping me from doing this or from being that way? Now, these aren't questions you just do a quick answer to. I find these often help with a journaling process. Can help talking to someone to talk through. And if you're writing it, just free writing, just keep writing. You could, for each of those questions, don't think, just list 10 things and then list 10 more that just pop to mind, just whatever comes to mind. You may be surprised what comes up as number 10, as number 15, as number 20. Those might be the hidden wins. That's where they hide. So questions like that: what's the worst thing that would happen if I got everything that I wanted? What am I most afraid of? What is it that's keeping me from that? How am I winning? That's another simple question. How am I benefiting from staying stuck? What's my win? Because I've found that there's always, 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 always a win to stay in a challenging situation, even if it's just to stay with what you know. Because a lot of times we may want wonderful things, but it seems so scary that we just don't know how to go there. We don't know who we would be if everything was working out well. So here's the thing with this: because this is unconscious, this can be really, really challenging to do on your own. It can help to have a really good friend to have these conversations with, to do these questions with. They can challenge you, and your friends can often see your blind spots. They can see how you might be benefiting if we start this conversation. Or if there are if these are deeper issues, you may need a coach or counselor to work with to say, how am I benefiting? Why am I fighting so irrationally to stay in such a bad situation, in such a toxic situation? Because here's the thing: until and unless you address the hidden wins, it does not matter how hard you work. You will not get there. Or if you get there, you will probably not sustain it. It will slip back. Okay. And so the flip side of that is, once you address these hidden wins, progress is usually very easy. Sometimes it just happens. It happens overnight. Because the thing is, your biggest barrier was not anything going on outside of you. It was yourself. And what you're doing is you get out of your own way. So progress often is not about working harder and applying yourself and making that happen. It's about getting out of your own way. And think about that. All the energy that's going on internally, conflicting, where you're fighting with yourself. Part of you is sabotaging yourself, fighting yourself irrationally, trying to keep you where you are. Part of you wants to move forward. All of that energy. Imagine if you can dissipate the conflict and align it so it's all working in the same direction. This is where the real progress happens. This is where you can really start to step forward and get what you really want, to really dive into what is it that is giving me a benefit. What are my hidden wins for staying here? And find other ways to get those wins. Once that's done, that your unconscious mind is no longer desperately holding on to that, all that energy can shift to where you want to be. And you will be amazed at how fast things can shift when you do that. If you're interested in having a chat about this, and if you've got some things that you have been wanting to do, some goals that you want to set, and you feel like you just cannot get there, that you're almost sabotaging yourself, feel free to reach out at callravi.com and let's have a virtual coffee and I might be able to help you identify some simple things you can do yourself, or we can explore if there's some way that I can help you to make a breakthrough to get what you really want. Thank you for joining me. This is SOULgineering Your Life and Work, and I am Ravi.
I got the energy, it's all I need to